Yeah,
Yes.
this is bad.
This is where talking, Tom. And hopefully, Pete, we'll have the same weather as we've got this morning.
Well, the sun was shining an hour ago, but now there's a fine drizzle and a blustery wind to welcome the 69 starters to this prestigious cycle race.
It's sponsored by Montura Bikes, Harrison Cameras of Sheffield and Polaris Bikewear, and it's run under TLI rules with 3 starting groups.
The first of these is the long markers, and this year there are 22 of them, including 5 ladies,
3 over 60s
and 2 previous age category winners, and one of those is Sheffield Phoenix's John Hind.
and Liz Long spoke to him earlier at Race HQ.
And what are you thinking about the course today?
Well, I rode it 2 years ago. It's fairly tough, good steep climb, so could probably do with being a bit bigger, fight my way through the wind, otherwise I'm going to have to get behind somebody to take some of that wind away. It's going to be fairly tough, I think.
And as the long markers are called to the starting line, remember that the riders are facing 42 miles of high peak undulations in the form of 5.5 laps of this 11.3k circuit.
Which begins with a fast 1 in 40 descent to Monash, then climbs up towards where the finish will be, before completing the climb back up to the start, and then doing it all over again, and again, and again. Well, it's almost time for the off, and raring to go, these are Ian Littlewood and Chris Jones.
Phoebe Snedden on the left and Vicky Thomas on the right.
And closest to the camera, last year's first lady to cross the line, Diane Lee. And behind her in the second row, that's Joanne Blakely. As you can hear, timekeeper John Grove is counting down, and so race organiser John Collins flags the start, and the 2012 High Peak Road Race is underway.
Now, there's a blind S-bend shortly after the start, so to be sure that the riders aren't caught out, the race is neutralised until they're through it for the first time.
And so, when Alison waves her flag, the racing starts in earnest. Back at the start of this video, we got a glimpse of the organisers doing their final check round the circuit. After months of paperwork and liaising with the local communities, they need to be on top of any problems with the road surface and the deployment of safety marshals, so that these riders, of all ages and abilities, can enjoy the thrill and challenge of this open road circuit in a safe and friendly competition. Well, as you can see, they're now leaving Flag, passing Town End Farm, before they round the 90-degree right-hander and head for Monash.
And it's still Littlewood setting the pace, followed by Dan Trainers, Chris Jones, Keith Ainsworth and John Hemsworth.
Here comes the pack, and someone's down. Now it looks like Diane Lee in the white jersey who stopped to help, but I can't see who came off. Did someone misjudge the turn, or was it loose gravel? Anyway, as soon as we get any more details, we'll let you know. But with time marching on, we'd better take a look at the middle markers.
And as you can see, there are some very capable riders in this group of 25.
And they're due to set off 6 minutes after the long markers.
After the right turn, the cows have been out this morning and there's some fresh stuff being laid down on the road. So again, be aware of that, especially with rain.
And so while I get an update on the crash, John Cooper's getting some thoughts from the starting line. And first, ex-pro Phil Thomas.
I'll see how it goes, because obviously we've got a really good group coming up from behind, this crash group, so if this group rides quite well and they have a hard job getting on, who knows?
This wind's going to cause a few problems, I think, particularly on this back straight, but yeah.
Have you ridden this particular event before?
I did it about 4 years ago and it was a lot warmer.
Yeah, so, and how did you fare that time?
I think I came about 12th, something like that.
Oh, that's very good, so you're just hoping to improve on that?
Definitely, yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
Okay.
If we can catch these guys, yeah.
Okay. Well, good luck, mate, and all the best.
Cheers.
And now the countdown. The middle markers about to pull away. The tension's tangible and they're away, and they move on. They'll be taking their time in the early few hundred yards, finding their feet, getting into position, trying to get out of that wind.
and there they go.
Here at Monash, these are the first of the long markers, because as you can see the 7 leaders are pulled well clear of the main group. And it was 102 Phoebe Snedden who came a cropper at the corner. Her gears jumped apparently, and yes, it was indeed Diane Lee who stopped to help her, and together with some roadside first aid from the Red Cross ambulance crew, I believe she's now back on her feet and to wheels and even planning to ride home. Now we're back at the S-Bend, where the neutralised middle markers are getting acquainted with the road layout before being waved into full racing mode. And they won't want to hang about, because the 22 elite racers in the scratch group will soon be under starters' orders. These guys are in peak form, and their handicap equates to an additional 2 miles an hour throughout, and Liz Long spoke to 3 of them at Race HQ.
Last year was my first year and it's fantastically blue skies, but yeah, this time the weather's a bit rougher and I try and block out the hills, but I'm sure I'll be reminded.
It's a hilly course, but it should suit me.
I did it a couple of years ago, and I've come about 5th or 6th in it, I think.
I wouldn't be here and hacking around 40 miles if we didn't want to get a good result, but there's just a nice atmosphere generally, so I think that's probably what it is for us.
Probably the rain will come into it at some stage, make it a bit harder. It's a hard course anyway.
I should be alright because I'm fairly little, but maybe some of the bigger guys.
But hey, everything's in the mix here, isn't it? And I think given its unusual structure of having 3 groups, I think that changes things a little bit rather than it being one big group.
You just got to hang in there and then just go with the moves on the climbs and just sit in really and try and break away if you can.
But I better go and get my bike out, otherwise I'm not ready for the start.
Go!
And go they certainly do. And a combination of fresh legs and working together sees the pack round the first lap in 17 minutes 47 seconds, gaining a minute on the middle markers and 2 minutes on the long markers.
And as the race continues, you can see how the gaps between the groups steadily decrease, so that by the end of the 4th lap, things are getting rather close.
This is lap 5. These are the guys who are in contention. They'll be pulling away now, wanting to keep as far ahead as they possibly can.
And at the moment, John, Keith Ainsworth is leading Nigel Harrop, John Hemsworth, Dave Allen and Chris Jones.
1 minute 46 behind them, and these are the 9 leading middle markers, currently led by Graham Kemp. And in his wake come Pete Wilbram, Mark Tickle, Ross Lamb, John Wells, Tim Colpin, Phil Thomas, Robert Fowler and Michael Clark. And 40 seconds behind them come the leading scratch riders, Paul Bethel, Jonathan Wolfe, Harry Shackleton, Chris Metcalf, Sean Snodden and Tom Bracegirdle, with middle markers Carl Dyke and Michael Tomlinson hanging on to their coattails.
This is Paul Gilbert leading the way as the bike marshal.
That's right, and in the background there goes a trailing group who are still on lap 4. By now, John, there are cyclists all round the entire circuit.
And some credit has to go out to the marshals, all voluntary, who are willing to give up their Sundays and stand, perhaps not in the best of weather, for July the 1st on corners to make sure that these roads are safe for these road cyclists.
And as the long markers start their descent towards Monash, the scratch group have steadied. They're still 2:26 off the pace.
But these guys are powering through, and leading the pack there was number 47, doing an incredible job.
And this is Monash, where the marshal with the red flag is warning the riders about a dodgy manhole cover.
Back up the course, and number 8 John Hind is just about to be taken by the middle markers. This could be an opportunity for a rider who's lost touch with his original group to get back in the race, but it's a big ask.
6 laps, roughly 7 miles each, and this, make no mistake, is a tough endurance test for every single rider of all ability here today.
And the scratch group making sure that they take the full advantage of each other's shelter.
And Jonathan Wolfe leads the scratch group into Monash, but they remain a stubborn 2:26 behind the long markers, and they're now turning into Horse Lane for the penultimate time.
There's a lot of pride at stake today, and people will be riding not just to win and those who are in contention, but also for personal pride. And I think anybody who can complete this particular route today, not least in these conditions, will have done exceptionally well.
the rain is coming down, the mist seems to be closing in, and it's just horrendous.
Not ideal conditions for a road race, but nonetheless, some great courage shown by the riders today, and there's some way to go yet.
And here we are at the top of Horse Lane. John Hind is about to be caught again, this time by the Scratch Group, who've used their strength to power up that hill and cut their deficit by 20 seconds.
The long markers now approaching, and it's not getting any easier with the weather conditions. This rain just seems to be taking a tighter and tighter hold on this event, and these guys, again, really working hard, and the Scratch Group riders powering away up that hill. And what is amazing is nobody seems to be taking it easy on this stretch. They really are hammering it up this hill, and it's impressive stuff today.
And as the middle markers start their last complete lap, they're just 62 seconds behind the leaders.
And this weather is getting tougher and tougher for these riders. Now, this is where this race can be cruel. Riders become isolated, they get dropped from their main bunch, and they have to make decisions on whether to try and catch or wait for the other groups behind them. The long marker group holding it together and working quite well as a team there.
But the middle markers are closing the gap now, John. It's only 59 seconds.
And these riders are certainly showing that they're not pulling any punches as they hit this climb at great speed.
Here's Rutland's Robert Fowler about to be caught on this uphill section. It's these climbs where the Scratch Group have got the power to close the gap, and now with Chris Metcalf in the driving seat, they're only 1:49 behind the leaders.
This is lap 6. These are the guys wanting to keep as far ahead as they possibly can.
And do they know that the chasing middle markers are now only 23 seconds behind them? With less than 9k to go, it's anybody's race. Paul Bethel now leading the Scratch Group, and they're only 70 seconds behind the leaders.
On lap 1, the Scratch guys were 2 minutes quicker than the long markers. Now, do we think they can do it again?
John Hind and Alan Dawson back in the race.
And here's another mixed group, with Joanne Blakely, leading leader of the three, still in the race.
Well done, keep going.
And with just over 6k to go, Chris Jones has taken over at the helm of the leading group. Dave Allen of Alford Wheelers knows that the chasing pack of middle markers isn't far behind, and if we stay on this shot whilst the safety cars and the camera bike go through, we'll see that the time gap between these two groups is now just 22 seconds. But when these guys get sight of the leaders, they'll instinctively up their speed, and that in turn will put even more pressure on the Scratch Group, who are doing the right thing and sharing the workload to some extent, John.
And leading the pack there, Tom Bracegirdle, who's among the youngsters today. Well done.
The leaders are now through Monash, but it looks like the driver of the white safety car thinks that the middle markers are going to catch them on Horse Lane, because he's pulled over to let them through, John.
One incredible thing is that these are in fact open roads, but that is superbly controlled by the volunteers here, marshals who've come from Norton Wheelers Cycling Club, Sharrow Cycling Club and the Whirlo Wheelers. So a big thank you goes out to them today.
That's right, and they're the three clubs who promote this event and support the organisers, Peter Dunworth and John Collins, and make it run as smoothly as it does, despite this weather. And as you saw back then, the split time between the two leading groups is now down to 20 seconds, and the Scratch Group are just 51 seconds behind the leaders, and now they're all on the final climb up Horse Lane.
But look at this, these guys are going to catch.
Well, our camera bike's shadowing the lead group, so despite the rain on the lens, you can just about see how much faster the middle markers are going as they gallop up Horse Lane. Less than 2.5k to go, we're at the top end of Horse Lane, and would you believe it, the chasing pack have simply powered up the hill and overtaken the long markers en masse. the two groups have just changed places, and apart from number 7 Nigel Harrop, none of the long markers have been able to respond to the challenge. The scratch group are now only 32 seconds behind the leaders, but at this distance that's got to be 20 seconds too many. And as the leading group of middle markers pass a Sheldon turn and psych themselves up for the final push, you've got to take your hat off to the handicappers for producing such a close finish, with the 3 leading packs chasing down the final straight.
Last lap, we caught the lead group. Some of them jumped on, and then it came to a sprint. I thought I'd left it too late. Someone went, but managed to jump on the wheel.
Turning into a sprint finish between what looks to be about half a dozen riders. There's going to be a close run thing, but it's a clear win there for 47. And where those guys found the energy to sprint like that after a race as hard as this one's been, who knows?
First prize then, £75 to Pete Wilbraham of Team Elite. Well done, Pete.
Yeah, it's great. I'm really pleased actually. I'm not really much of a, I don't see myself as being much of a climber, so I was a bit unsure really as to whether it was even worth me turning up today. I thought, well, it's wet, it's windy, there's lots of big hills, but I enjoyed it, and yeah, really pleased with one. Really pleased.
Well done. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, and thanks for a great event. It was really well organised. So thank you very much.
So Peter and John on the left and right of the picture, thanks for all the hard work that goes into dotting the I's and crossing the T's. And on that subject, thanks to the Chelmorton Institute volunteers for serving refreshments and hot drinks after the race. So, just time for a quick reminder of who won what. And of course this year the Lynn Collins Memorial Award was presented for the very first time, this time to First Lady rider to arrive, Joanne Blakely. And a final thank you to everyone who took part in the 2012 High Peak Road Race.